What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 249 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode, number 249, is entitled The Outcast. It's another Wacky Wednesday, so we're going through chapters of the From Ashes to Destiny curriculum. We're in phase 2 dealing with heart wounds, and this is the first story from chapter 8 of phase 2 entitled The Heart of an Outcast. I'd like to start by reading that first story from Paul. And it says, Paul is currently incarcerated in Lancaster County Prison. I was born in New York City. I had an eye problem at birth, and I never felt accepted by anyone. My father died when I was 7 years old. I've been called names my whole life. I always felt stupid because I was always told that I was stupid. I've only been good at two things in my life: fixing motors and doing drugs. Man, am I good at doing drugs. I'm a pro at being a junkie. My self-esteem has always been low. The more drugs I used, the lower my self-esteem went. I knew everyone saw me as a junkie, so I had no remorse in using people to get money to get high. I would do anything: rob, sell drugs, prostitution, anything to get money for drugs. I loved to get high. When I was high, I didn't have to deal with all my feelings of rejection. Great short story there from Paul sharing his feelings of being an outcast. So let's look at some discussion questions from that. Number 1, Paul had an eye problem at birth and was called names his whole life. And you saw how he said he was called stupid. So I want to ask, were you called names because of your appearance? Paul's was simply because he had an eye problem that was obvious when you looked at him. And he was called names because of that his whole life. Were you called any names? Were you mocked and bullied because of your appearance? Number 2, Paul never felt accepted by anyone. Were you an outcast? Were you the black sheep of the family, or an outcast in school or growing up? Do you still feel like an outcast? What things do you do to feel accepted? Have you become a people pleaser or a loner because you can't get accepted? What things did you do because you weren't accepted? So I'd like to talk about that aspect of being an outcast and trying to get accepted, or being an outcast and just feeling resigned to the fact. Number 3, Paul was always called stupid, so he felt stupid. But you also heard Paul saying, he was good at some stuff, but he felt stupid his whole life. So I want to ask you, how did the lack of acceptance and the name calling make you feel? What emotions did you feel at that time when the name calling was going on? How did that change your development into who you are, your personality, your socialization skills, your friends, your family? And what have you done about it? Number 4, Paul said he was only good at two things: fixing motors and doing drugs. So I want to ask you, what things are you good at? What things can you honestly say I'm good at? Or like Paul, did you find that, I'm a pro at being a junkie. I've sort of found my niche in life, and that's addiction. And is that what you're feeling right now? Or did addiction make you feel more of a failure? Number 5, Paul's self-esteem was always low and got lower as he used more drugs. What did your addiction do to your feelings about your self-esteem and self-worth? And if you're in recovery, how have you rebuilt your self-esteem and your feelings of self-worth? Number 6, because he was seen as a junkie, Paul said he had no remorse as he used people to get money for drugs. And he mentioned all kinds of things he would do, rob and lie and steal and cheat and prostitution, with no remorse. So looking back, what sort of things do you now feel remorse about your actions in addiction? Can you list some of those things and talk about them? Did you feel remorse when you did them, or are you only feeling remorse now when you're trying to establish your recovery? Can you describe your feelings of remorse when you relapse or continue to dip and dab? Is your self-esteem still getting beat up even though you're no longer using, or perhaps when you just use a little bit? Number 7, as long as he was high, Paul didn't have to deal with his emotions as an outcast. So what feelings can you numb whenever you get high? Are you numbing feelings of rejection, abandonment? Are you numbing feelings of never being good enough or never fitting in, never being accepted? What are the emotions that you've felt as an outcast, and are your actions in getting high, your drugs, alcohol, porn, whatever it is, the only thing that can numb them? And if you found that those things that you're doing are counterfeit, what are you doing now that is truly comforting your emotions and your feelings? Or is it bringing healing, not just numbing them? Okay? I think we've got a lot to talk about there from this short story and just a few questions from Paul. So just a short episode for this first one for Wacky Wednesday for today. I hope it touched you. I hope it gave you things to think about, things to talk about. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. And I want to encourage you to write some things down, to talk to people about them, a mentor, a sponsor, a coach, a counselor, a friend, a family, whatever. Perhaps you might want to join a group. You can message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. If you're listening on Spotify, you can leave your comments there by clicking on the link they provide in that platform. Keep listening to future podcasts, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.